Right, hello everyone. Welcome to another wonderful video here of Level Up Mental Health. My name is Swizz. Got a good skill discussion here related to grief. Grief is a very impactful aspect in our everyday life here. What's important is that every one of us goes through a grieving process. We've all experienced a particular traumatic event. One of the most common ones that really impact us is death, right? Being able to kind of deal with that and grieve through that is a big thing. But I'm here to kind of tell you that there's other things that we can be grieving over. So we'll explore what those are. We'll explore what grieving may look like, and explore one of the most common kind of theoretical concepts related to grief is the 5 stages of grief. So we'll be able to explore that and go from there. So let's take a look at the worksheet here. And here we are. We're at the grief process. So from grief to growth. What's important to understand, as I was saying even in that last video that we were doing, is that the goal, especially for grief, to kind of start out, like let's say that you're here and you really want to work and improve on being able to kind of manage how you want to heal from a difficult time that you've experienced. The first thing, obviously, from the previous video, is being able to just kind of take that step back to observe and really just kind of have that self-reflection that you're going through, right? So in order to do that, being able to kind of practice certain things such as journaling is a big thing, right? And the more you're able to identify what your experience is that you have, the better you'll be able to kind of understand, okay, what should be my process be here, right? So when we're looking at grief, again, one of the main things that is impactful for us a lot of the time is for the fact that we look at it as death is kind of that main thing. But there's other things we can grieve. Things like dreams and time and energy, our self-esteem, relationships, and even loved ones and enthusiasm for life are all things we can grieve. A common thing, especially, let's say for a new time parent, where you're really having that kind of role shift is big. When you're going from just kind of being that independent to more so of caring for a life, right? There's grief associated with your former life. That's big. So with that grief, there are a lot of emotions that can occur from that. Certain things like anger, guilt, blame, shock, sadness, confusion, anxiety. All this can happen if we're experiencing that feeling of grief, right? And when we're experiencing that feeling of grief, it can come out in particular behaviors such as crying, screaming, wanting to be held or listened, not letting anyone in again, and shutting down in anger or aggression. All these are behavioral responses that can occur from if we've had grief that may have not been resolved, right? Now the question may be asked, how long will this last? Well, unfortunately, there's not a particular end in that process, right? Because what's important to understand is that your grief process is unique for how you are, right? And the more that you're able to really have that self-reflection and being able to kind of think about, the impact that has for you, the better we'll be able to have that healing there, right? So, where do we kind of go from there, especially if we are knowing that, again, like this is impactful, right? This is really having the difficulties of trying to kind of manage that grief, especially if it's impacting functioning, right? So I'll share a skill here in a sec for things we can kind of practice that. But another kind of information related to grief and the impact it can have is that it may also lead us to become avoidant of being able to kind of heal through that process, right? So recognize again, and that's where the journaling comes from. If you feel you may exhibit some of these behaviors, like the isolating, the complaining, the intellectualization, the increased sleeping habits, those things may be a sign that we're avoiding that grief process. And again, through self-reflection, through journaling, allows us to really have that ability to think about these things. Now, the last part here relates to the grief process is a fairly common one that a lot of us are very familiar with, and it's through the 5 stages of grief. So what is it? Essentially, it's a way to kind of help create a foundation for areas and avenues that you might go down when you've experienced a very difficult situation. Researcher studies, whoever it is, we're able to kind of combine kind of the five main areas that an individual may experience while going through the grief process. So let's take a look at them and see kind of how they're interconnected. The first one here is denial. So if a traumatic situation happens, there's that refusal to believe, that confusion, really the ability to kind of deny the reality there, which can be big. Next one here is anger. The hostility, power struggles, hopelessness, self-sabotaging behaviors all relate to if you feel you might be in that anger stage of the grief process. Third one here, bargaining. The compromising needs, finding an easy way, trying to keep it from happening. Give me one more chance, I'll prove it to you, right? These things are big as we're trying to, if we're trying to get through that healing process, but we're trying to say, hey, maybe there's a way I can get this back, right? Fourth one here, depression. The despair, the sorrow, the pain, the sadness. There is no hope for this. Very common stage here for grief. And the last one here that is always very difficult to achieve is through acceptance. The acknowledging, surrendering, letting go, the genuineness, the reduction defenses are all key there. So what's important to understand is through these 5 stages here, that's not a linear process. You may start down the anger stage and kind of jump to depression, and then may go back to the anger, right? It's how kind of you and yourself are handling, this difficult situation. And ultimately, the best thing we could do is those practices through the journaling, the self-reflection, and really just kind of being in with those emotions is key. One of the things that I do recommend in regards to the journaling aspect, if you experience a very traumatic situation, let's say if you were 5 or 6 or something that happened, and you very vividly remember that, there's a good skill you could do that's called like a letter to yourself, to be able to kind of imagine that you're writing a letter to your 5 or 6-year-old self about that traumatic situation, and be able to just kind of get that healing in that process of maybe, what you feel that traumatic experience has had onto you, where you want to see yourself from it, maybe the growth that you've gone through that. Being able to do that thing is really helpful to just kind of get that healing there and get to that hopefully acceptance stage that you're hoping for. So yeah, that's grief there. And like I was saying, it can be a very difficult process. It's not a linear process, and what's important to understand is it's very individualized. It's not a one-size-fit-all for everything, and the more they're able to, again, have that self-reflection, the better you'll be at being able to handle that. So it's just going to take time, take practice, and just know, again, the strategy that you're doing, whether it's journaling or self-reflection or getting in tune or whatever it is, you're on the right path towards that healing to get to that acceptance stage. Okay? So, thank you so much for watching. If you're on YouTube, make sure to like, subscribe. If you're on Twitch, like I said, we might be playing Psychonauts here in a sec. We'll be right back. So thank you.